Pleasure to be here today, and I want to thank Nate as well. And Nate, please jump in if I misstate something or you want to add something to this. I had a quick question for Barry. What I'm going to be focusing on is the grant programs for California, and one of the key criteria is use of California tires in the rack. How difficult is that for you as a producer to certify that? Because that's how we handle it. We require the contractor to produce a certification. Could you address that?
Actually, that's a very simple process because every tire comes to at our gate, we have to be manifested. So we know where the source of the tire is. So every tire comes, we know the source, who produced it, and the tires we get at our door is all California tires. So the tires coming from out of the state was talked about today usually do not find its way to tire recycler. Usually goes to the landfill or being used for burning.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, who is the Northern California Rubberized Technology Center? As in my introduction, I'm an engineer with a local entity, and Sacramento County and Los Angeles County has been partnered with the Integrated Waste Management Board for 5 years now. LA was even longer. And what we offer is assistance in helping local jurisdictions produce a successful rubber overlay project, kind of sharing our experiences. We're not salespeople, it's government talking to government. We bring free seminars, field tours. We produced a guidebook several years back. And we operate a website that's currently down but is going to kind of be reborn, and Andrew's going to talk more about it in a better format. But our website is simply rubberasphalt.org, and that should be up shortly. A lot of good information in that. I want to focus on the rebate program as well. But Barry talked a little bit about the Type 1 and Type 2 asphalt, and just to share with you what we do is we leave that up to the contractor. We have it in either or, Type 1 or Type 2. I've never been presented any technical data that either one has a significant performance improvement, so we leave that. Of course, the Waste Board would like us to use Type 1, I think, because it's using the primary source of waste. But Type 2 is available. I think the workability might be better, and by and large, it's our experience that Type 2 is what's usually specified. There's some other products that are out on the market. The dry process was used experimentally for a while in Southern California, where the crumb is added almost like an aggregate source. So the theory was that the mixing and the digestion or whatever happens somewhere on the way to the job site and placement. Not too much use of that. And then, of course, terminal blend is another a refinery product, much less crumb tire used, a much finer mesh, sieve, I should say. And I think probably the data on the viscosity is probably not as tremendous. And then, as Barry detailed, the cushioning effect, I guess, between the rocks. So just briefly, why should local agencies choose asphalt rubber? It's been around for 30 years, a lot of good studies and long-term performance. It allows a higher binder content in the mix without sacrificing bleeding or shoving. And that increased binder content is what makes that pavement last longer when it dries out and gets brittle, certainly in colder climates as well. There's a greater film thickness on the rocks, so you don't get that polishing effect on the pavements, better for skid resistance. Again, this helps with the durability. A much higher viscosity, and in Palm Springs or even in Sacramento when we have the 110 degrees days, that higher softening point and higher viscosity help with the rut resistance that we get on our local roads. Sacramento County has one local road that has 107,000 vehicles a day. That's a freeway type volume, and these are the kinds of challenges we're dealing with. Less maintenance. Local agencies' maintenance funding is completely flat. Our system is deteriorating. Many jurisdictions don't have a preventative maintenance program, so our feeling is that additional cost for rubber pays from a life cycle perspective in maintenance long term. Better crack resistance can be used in reduced thicknesses. So many jurisdictions I go and talk to, one of the first questions I ask is, what is your overlay design procedure? And they say hot, black, and 1.5 inches. And I'm telling you, you've got to have a more rigorous design, either deflection testing or some cores of what the existing pavement is, to determine what that road needs for a structural section. And RAC can help you with the reduced thickness in that regard. Less oxidation. And for some of the spray-applied rubber treatments, good alternative for a road where you're looking at a full reconstruction. When we're an aging population, and the color contrast with this rubber product stays black for a longer period of time, so that color contrast with the striping really helps. And that in my introduction, they talked about the noise reduction, and to me, this is probably one of the biggest market opportunities for rubberized asphalt. Our study compared conventional overlays with rubber overlays and came back 6 years later and compared the noise reduction. The conventional overlays essentially dissipated in about 16 to 18 months, but the rubber overlays over a period of time still had up to 4 decibel reduction when compared to the pre-overlaid condition. Decibels are like the Richter scale. It's logarithmic. That's a tremendous reduction. So for a local entity where you have a road widening that has a series of driveway openings and a sound wall is just not feasible, we can say something to the community that we're sensitive to noise, and then this rubberized asphalt is and it's profound when a politician is demanding rubberized asphalt on their street. It's a win-win kind of situation. And heck, I didn't even mention the recycled product aspect too. So that's really great. A little bit of our experience. We first experimented with this product in 1990 when there was a mandate on use of recycled product with federal money that we were using. But we've observed the positive performance over the years, and as was mentioned, nearly 380,000 tons. Developed a new design procedure. We have an acceptance testing procedure where you take a core out of the pavement and you run a quick test for air voids, and then we have a pay clause that's associated with that. It helps get the contractor's attention about compaction requirements. If you're interested, I can give you my card and send you that. And we've experimented with the thin lifts in residential streets. These are 1 inch thick with a 1/2 inch mix. We don't raise any iron. We don't do any grinding next to the pavement, and it's profoundly successful. And then we have a rural chip seal program as well. Some things to think about for the contractor's perspective and what you want is a good price is small projects equal large costs. Think about it. There's the mobilization of the plant. You're tying up a hot plant making rubber where conventional may not have the silo capacity to provide conventional asphalt for their other customers. So you got to have big projects. You should be talking to your local agencies to kind of bid jobs at the same time or perhaps even bid them together. Bottom line, the more tonnage, the lower the price that those mobilization costs get absorbed in. Other techniques are bidding a job in the winter and allowing the industry to schedule when that job's going to be done. Barry kind of detailed some of the crumb manufacturing concerns. They're still going to call you and want it in July, but if you give the contractor some flexibility, some notice requirements in advance, you can get the word out, and I think it leads to better costs. Also, with the increase in oil prices, I would suggest you include some sort of indexing in your specifications for the oil. And Caltrans has a very good oil indexing that's published on their website monthly. It's just fair to have that risk equally shared amongst you and the contractor. All right, so let's talk about the grant program. These pictures are from the Wesley Tire Fire in 1999. Burned for what, 9 months? Something like that. Millions of tires burning up. So this ignited, excuse the pun, the waste board and the legislature to help them out. So in 2000, there was a Senate Bill 876 that increased the amount of fee when you have a discarded tire threefold. And the Waste Board's been very good about using that money to promote rubberized asphalt. In 2002, Senate Bill 1346 developed a series of grants between 3,500 and 20,000 tons that uses the wet process. They had a $2.50 per ton and a great rebate program that can be used to provide inspection on jobs or to provide some testing. The idea was that they wanted to get, and maybe help a little bit on the cost differential with conventional, but assure that you get quality jobs out there, and then the local jurisdictions can observe the pavements over time like we did in Sacramento County and say, this is a good product, I'm going to start having more routine use with it. Under that program, they issued 170 grants to 75 jurisdictions all through the state. So some seeds have been planted in these jurisdictions. Later in 2002, Caltrans had a guidebook that was developed that was through legislation. And then in 2005, a requirement that Caltrans increase their usage of rubberized asphalt, some guaranteed percentages over time. And I think it's in 2015 they have to be at 50%, something along those lines. And Caltrans has stepped up to the plate. Here are some tonnages that they've used, have placed over the last 5 or 6 years. They've actually, in 2005, 34%, almost 35% of their overlays are rack overlays. Now, why is this important to a local jurisdiction? First of all, local jurisdictions look to Caltrans for leadership. They look for their specifications. A lot of them just refer to the Caltrans specification. But moreover, it's an opportunity for local jurisdictions. If Caltrans has a big overlay job, you can bid your jobs either ahead or behind their job and kind of draft along in their wake. So it's very important. And it also helps getting market-driven. Price would come down for different aspects. There's a lot of fear out there about what rubberized asphalt is. So more contractors using it, the equipment that's available, the products that are available will help local jurisdictions. Continuing on, just recently the governor signed kind of a re-upping of the CUEL bill that provides grants for local jurisdictions. So in $2.2 million annually through 2010. And they increase the grant amount up to $250,000 per jurisdiction and lowers the minimum quantity in a job. But it also expands the grant program to use other tire-derived aggregate for civil engineering uses through that grant program, allows more flexibility for the board, of the Waste Board, to kind of tweak the amounts of the grants. And also kind of included rubber-modified binders and chip seals into that program. So far, okay?
Yeah.
Nate? Okay. All right, so let's talk about the targeted RAC incentive program. In May of 2005, the board allocated roughly $2.2 million for fiscal year 06-07 for this targeted grant program. And then in October of 2006, they added another $4 million. And they did a little tweaking on the eligibility criteria. And so in last fiscal year, they awarded 22 grants, and they have 14 grants in 2006-07. It's really targeted to new users or limited users that might have used it in the past to help for training and a financial incentive to use RAC. It's going to offset the cost a little bit as well and provide some inspection. So some of the details of the project must use the ASTM standard, 20 pounds of crumb per ton. The reimbursement rate is $2.50. Grant funding from $6,000 up to $50,000 per project. That's sorry, this is the old program, right?
Yeah, that's for the rebate program.
That was the rebate program, which is sunsetted now?
Yes.
Okay. And at that time, there was some north and south. There was a strong market for RAC in Southern California, so they were trying to drive the market into Northern California and some of these rural jurisdictions trying to get that, so they had some awards for those. So the criteria that was used, if you've had no RAC projects in the last 10 years, and you can kind of see this sliding scale of how the board selected their grants applicants. Other elements is you had to insert some environmental justice certification. You had to, and the reason I asked this question about it had to be California tires that were in there. And then your agency also had to have a recycled content purchasing policy in place. So some jurisdictions didn't have that in place, and they had to get that to their board and have a resolution passed or have some program in place in order for them to participate in the grant. And the resolution sample is on the website, and I've included the website at the top of this header here. So some recent targeted grant programs you can see. These are the ones that, have they been approved yet, or is it pending?
All those have been approved overall this year,
Okay.
this fiscal year.
So a lot of Southern California, but go talk to these neighbors if they're neighbors of yours. See if there's partnerships that can be formed. See if you can bid projects together. It might be very helpful. So the renewed grant here, SB 369, as I mentioned, the $2.5 million plus the another $4 that was added. There's the $4 per ton that has been added to that. Again, local governments are eligible for this. Unfortunately, Caltrans isn't. I think of any kind of CFD, Community Financing District, local jurisdictions are available. You can see the tonnages there. And again, the 100% California waste tires requirement. Their criteria is a little bit different. It's kind of more of a bang for the buck kind of thing. They're trying to get large RAC projects put out. So the amount of RAC is the first criteria. And kind of open the window on using other crumb modified products in here. So, maybe a terminal blend might be eligible. I'm not certain. But that criteria kind of sets that up. And then the project readiness is another criteria. So if you've got an awarded project or you're out to bid or you're planning on it, that all factors into the board's consideration of providing you the grant. Again, you must have the resolution to make the application and the recycled content policy in place prior to the application. So for the upcoming program, you have, is it still mid-November for applications is what you're targeting?
Right.
Okay.
Having the application available.
Okay, so the application will be available mid-November with the deadline in January, and then they want to come back every 2 months with a new set of applications through May of 2007. So here's Nate's contact information, and then mine as well, and feel free to use our services if you want to add some more, Nate.
I just want to add a couple of clarifications. For the targeted program, once again, that's geared mainly to first-time users or limited experience jurisdictions. The difference is with the targeted program, you have to use the asphalt rubber specification per ASTM. With the SB 369 rebate style program, which is geared to the ongoing jurisdictions that use rubberized asphalt each year, that has to only contain 20 pounds of rubber per ton of hot mix. So you might be able to get a terminal blend in that program, but you could not use a terminal blend for the targeted program. The other thing is, as Theron mentioned, in 05-06 in the targeted program, we did have 22 grants. We gave away $3.6 million. In 06-07, the reason we got the additional $4 million is because we gave away the original $2.2 million basically by the end of August. So we've given out 14 grants in 06-07 for slightly over $2.3 million. But we do have an additional $4 million available. If you've never used the material, please contact me. Come see me. I don't have my big checkbook with me, but I would be willing to work with you. The other thing I just wanted to add, as far as the application, it is a one-page application. It's very simple to fill out. It's basically your contact information and then some project description information. The certifications that were mentioned are basically just an initial that you're going to do, you abide by environmental justice procedures and that you will use California rubber. The recycled content policy, we do have a sample. I think as Theron mentioned, we do have a sample that's available online. It can be, if your jurisdiction does not have a current policy, you can enact one before you submit your application. We don't have a problem with that. And the same thing with the resolution. We do have a sample resolution that you could adopt or copy or however you want to modify it for your uses. So that's all I had to add. I think everything else was pretty close to what's happened. Actually, I did want to add one other thing. We mentioned there's been 170 grants in the rebate program, which was through Senate Bill 1346, which is now sunsetted. We've got the 36 grants in the targeted program, but the Waste Board has actually been giving grants away since 1991 for rubberized asphalt projects. And to date, we have about 225 grants we've given away, and the total's been over $10 million to local governments. And most of it's been in the last 3 years through the targeted program and through the SB 1346 program. But we have had a history of supporting rubberized asphalt since basically the beginning of our tire program back in the early 90s. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions. You're going to have to yell. Oh. Could you use the microphone? I can't hear you.
Did I read this slide properly where Theron was saying that it was going to be modified to include asphalt rubber chip seals? And the reason I asked that is we're a chip seal contractor, and we've been getting a lot of questions from agencies for the past several years. And we place approximately 3 million pounds of crumb rubber a year into our spray applies, which isn't a large amount compared to the hot mix, but it's still a considerable amount of rubber being consumed.
I think that's in reference to the Senate Bill 369 program. I think initially it did have chip seals in there, but I think in one of the maybe the last modifications they might have wiped it out. However, if you can prove that you're putting in 20 pounds of rubber per ton of mix, a chip seal would be eligible for that program.
But we can't really compare it to a ton of mix because the spray apply, it's in binder form.
Ton of chip seal.
Well,
It's not
yeah,
a
it'd be a
chip
ton
seal.
of chip seal, including the rock.
Right.
It'd be per ton of material used. So if you took let's say a square yard, and you cut that square yard out, however thick you put it down, you would weigh that material, and you'd have a unit weight. So that would be the basis for determining whether you have 20 pounds of that, 20 pounds of rubber within that ton of material that you put down.
It says chip seal.
But
Right,
isn't
in
it-
Is
legislation?
this the enrolled bill?
Yep.
Okay. I stand corrected. It does allow chip seals, but you're still going to have to meet the 20 pound of rubber per ton of material.
I'll have to do some calculations on it, but I think they're kind of comparing apples and oranges there. I don't know if it's possible to get 20 pounds when you're calculating the aggregate along with it. I don't know if that's possible.
If I can clarify.
It's the same recipe.
No, with the new bill 369, it does allow, there's two components. There's a RAC program that's required, it's a required RAC program, and they have certain funding requirements to it. But everything else is also allowed. It's just not called RAC. And those other things that are not RAC are polymer treatment, rubber reclaiming and crumb rubber production, retreading, shredding, manufacture of products made from used tires, rubberized asphalt, asphalt rubber, modified binders and chip seals, playground equipment, crash barriers, non-slip floor and track surfacing, oil spill recovery equipment, roof adhesives, tire drive aggregate applications, including lightweight fill and vibration mitigation. So all of these projects, although they're not RAC, are eligible for funding under this program.
Maybe the board just hasn't allocated it yet.
Well, that's
This is upcoming, it just passed, so the programs have not been introduced into the Waste Board's funding program, yes.
So they haven't determined the amount of funding either for chip seals? What the cap is?
Well, the cap for these extra projects, according to this bill, were, the maximum amount cannot exceed $250,000 per project. All right. I will reference this document, this booklet that we prepared. It does have SB 369. It's a good read, very, very interesting read if you're into that type of thing. Also, in Section 5, it covers the application program a little bit. It has an application in there in print, so you can see how simple it is to complete.
What I was going to say is, what I'll tell you for sure, the programs that we have approved by our board, the targeted program is online, it's in effect. Like I said, we have $4 million basically available. I'm not going to call it the SB 1340, SB 369 program, even though that is applicable. The other program we do have is a rebate program, which we're offering $4 per ton rebate on any material that uses 20 pounds of rubber per ton of mixed material, whether that be a chip seal or hot mix.
Any other questions about the incentive programs? Any other questions for Nathan Theron? Okay. One other question, go ahead.
Yeah, you say that you have one grant per jurisdiction. Is there going to be a time limit on that to where they go, say, every 5 years to reward that jurisdiction, they get to apply for another grant, or is there going to be anything upcoming like that?
Okay, for the targeted program, it's a one-time grant. You get one grant, you're no longer eligible for that program. The other thing I wanted to add about the targeted program, it's based on the differential cost of using a rubber material or an asphalt rubber versus conventional. That's how we determine the basis for the grant. So let's say there's a $30 differential. You would take that $30 per ton differential multiplied by the number of tons you're going to use in your project, and that would be the basis for your grant, up to a specified maximum, depending on whether, if you're a southern jurisdiction, it'd be $150,000. If you're a northern jurisdiction, which is basically north of Kern County, it's $175,000. And if you're a rural jurisdiction, it's the maximum is $200,000. Okay, with the rebate type grants, you can apply for those every year. That's geared toward the ongoing users. So, for example, Sacramento County could apply for all the project work that they're going to do in that year. Each year, they could apply for a grant. And actually, I think they've been awarded grants each of the 3 years we've had the rebate program. Same with LA County and Thousand Oaks and some of the other agencies that use the material on an ongoing basis. So you can apply for the $4 a ton every year.